Hello, good afternoon. My name is Carrie Ann Kane. I'm an associate in Sachs Dornberger and Vita's Northeast office. I'm part of the Natural Disasters Recovery Group.
Hi everyone, I'm Samantha Oliveira. I too am an associate in the Northeast office, and I'm also a part of the Natural Disaster Recovery Group.
So today we're going to talk about a case alert that the Natural Disaster Group recently released for a case called New Jersey Transit Corp versus certain underwriters at Lloyd's. This is a decision that came out of the New Jersey Supreme Court concerning an insurance coverage dispute over property damage caused by Superstorm Sandy. Most people probably remember the storm, especially along the East Coast. It hit back in October 2012 and was one of the most severe and costliest hurricanes in US history. I know I certainly remembered it because it was my first semester at law school and we didn't have class for over a week because there was, no power, so much damage throughout Connecticut. New Jersey was definitely one of the states that was hit the hardest, having sustained significant property damage all along the coast. And it ended up resulting in a lot of insurance coverage litigation, some of which is still going on today. One of the major issues in these disputes is whether the damages were caused while Sandy was considered a hurricane versus a named storm, because over the 9 days or so that it was moving up the coast from the Caribbean, it morphed from a Category 1 hurricane to a hybrid of 2 storms, which is why it's been dubbed a superstorm. And the distinction is important, especially insurance coverage, because a lot of property policies include sublimits or deductibles specific for flood losses or hurricanes or named storms, which we'll see in this case that we're going to talk about. And the way that these deductibles or sublimits apply really depends on the specific language of each policy.
That's right, Carrie Ann, and the policies that might be triggered by these superstorms or hurricanes or named storm or commercial property policies, homeowner policies, and as you were saying, there's sublimits, and there's also sometimes exclusions for a named storm, which wouldn't be would be a hurricane, or a superstorm, which debatably may or may not be. So here we don't have the exclusion issue, but like you said, we have the flood sublimit that the carrier was trying to enforce.
So in this particular case, New Jersey Transit Corp had purchased a multi-layered all risks property insurance program. All risks meaning that the policy covers all perils and damage to property unless it's specifically excluded under the policy. The program consisted of 4 layers of coverage. The first layer provided $50 million in coverage, followed by 3 excess layers, which provide an additional $350 million in coverage for $400 million. And each policy included a $100 million sublimit for losses caused by flood. And the excess layer policies included specific definitions for the terms flood, named windstorm, and storm surge. So after Hurricane Sandy, New Jersey Transit's property sustained a lot of damage, so they submitted a claim under the property insurance program. And the primary policy paid the full $50 million, but the excess insurers only offered to pay an additional $50 million, claiming that because all of the losses were caused by a flood, it was subject to the $100 million sublimit. New Jersey Transit then filed suit, seeking a declaration that it was entitled to the full $400 million because this flood limit sublimit did not apply to losses caused by a named windstorm, and Superstorm Sandy met that definition in the excess policies.
That's right. So ultimately, this came down to specifics and the definitions of these, the definitions found in the policy. So the court ultimately held that the named windstorm definition more specifically encompassed the wind-driven water or a storm surge, and that definition applies. The court further went on to conclude that if the excess carriers had intended that damage from a storm surge would be subject to the flood sublimit, then the policies could have stated that in plain language, and they didn't. So ultimately, this one was a win for the policyholder. As hurricanes continue to increase in the number of in their numbers and in severity, policyholders in coastal areas should carefully review their insurance programs to ensure that they have sufficient coverage in place. If you have specific questions regarding hurricane coverage, the Natural Disaster Recovery Group has published a hurricane season policyholders handbook, which is available on our website at sdvlaw.com. Or you can email Carrie Ann and I directly at naturaldisasters@sdvlaw.com. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.